Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Prospect Like a Pro, Advanced Tips for Fundraisers. My name is Kyle Kivett. I'm a Senior Marketing Manager here at Candid, and my pronouns are he, him. I am joined today with a super awesome team. We're very excited to have you. And this includes one of Candid's top training experts, David Holmes, as you've already met. And here to answer your, oh, here we go. Let me click here. Here we are. And here to answer your questions today, we have a panel here of 6 individuals. We have Diana Garcia, Katie Klein, Tori Borello, Moni Sen, Stephanie Coates, and Dorothy Ho. Now, since there are over 4,000 of you that have registered for this webinar, please bear with them. There's a lot of you guys and only 6 of them. Many of you might have heard of Candid before. That might sound familiar. If not, you've likely heard of Foundation Center or GuideStar in the past. Well, in 2019, we came together. And for those of you who might not have heard of Candid before, we are a nonprofit ourselves. We are a data and tech infrastructure nonprofit. Our mission is focused on ensuring those working in the social sector or those working with partners in the social sector are getting the data and resources that they need to succeed. And for nonprofits, this simply means funding. As a nonprofit ourselves, we understand this aspect very, very well. We know that fundraising is a key component, an important activity because we go through the same challenges as you, and we live and breathe the social sector the same as you. So, what are we going to learn today? Some key takeaways from today's webinar that each of you will walk away with. Number one is why diversifying your funding mix will help ensure a more stable future for your nonprofit. You'll also learn how to find and connect key decision makers with key decision makers at institutions using our premier fundraising tool, Foundation Directory. And you can also learn how to leverage peer insights within the Foundation Directory tool as a more advanced way of prospecting. So you're going to walk away with a new prospecting strategy to include in your fundraising toolkit. I would like to reiterate, we also very much understand that individual donations and individual giving is a very important component of fundraising for nearly all nonprofits, including ourselves. So we're not ever going to encourage not to do this activity. What we would like to encourage you to do is explore grants as a complementary funding source to individual giving activities. And by doing this, we're hoping this is a way to help future-proof your finances for your nonprofit. As you can see here on the screen, there's an article that was published this year, June 25th, by philanthropy.com. They discovered that 2.1% of overall giving dropped in 2023. I'm sure everyone here today has sort of felt the grip that inflation has had on our pocketbooks. And as inflation rose last year, the number of Americans that gave to charities and nonprofits actually dropped. Not a huge surprise there. But how can we ensure that we're more protected in the future for this? Because although the future itself isn't certain, what is certain is that these economic downturns are unpredictable and they will happen again. So this just means that individual giving itself, it's hard to expect that to also just remain consistent. And when when the main funding source of your nonprofit is relying heavily on individual donations, this can create this kind of roller coaster effect where you have ups and downs in your funding, which just makes it difficult for your nonprofit overall to maintain operations, start new projects, expand your programming, and just overall deliver on your mission. This is where institutional grants come in. So grants do a number of really positive things. They positive things towards giving you a more stable funding solution in future. These grants typically have larger dollar amounts, no problem there. But even more than that, oftentimes they come with multi-year commitments that greatly enhance your nonprofit's financial security over time. So with financial security, obviously you do get to start those projects, those larger projects that you've been excited to get started, or it's just simply going to help you sustain your operations more effectively and more confidently. So aligning yourself with these organizations has some more benefits. You also, when you're aligning yourself with institutions that have similar objectives and missions to your nonprofit, you inherently receive more visibility and it enhances your nonprofit's credibility. It also just in general helps your networking opportunities and increases your capacity building. Okay. Before we dive deeper into this, I would like to take a quick poll to gauge everybody's how everyone feels about grant prospecting in general. So we're going to go ahead and start a poll. You should be seeing it popping up on your screen. So just take a moment here. Please choose the statement that best represents how you feel about grant prospecting. We have A, it's part of my funding mix. B, I'm hopeful to include it in my funding mix. And C, it seems too daunting to begin. We're going to let this run for just a bit. Lots of participation. This is fantastic. Keep the answers coming. I'm going to wait until it sort of trails off just a bit. It's kind of like watching popcorn pop in the microwave. This is already very interesting. Okay, I say we let it go to a full minute, and then at a minute we're gonna cap it and see and share with everybody what these results are. It's fascinating. All right, let's go ahead and get the results. I think it's starting to slow down. Boom. Okay. So this is also really great to see. We have 67% of people that say grants have been part of their funding mix. So this is fantastic because you're going to walk away from this webinar with a new strategy, with a more advanced strategy using our tool foundation directory that you can keep in your toolbox and use in the future. So for those who are hopeful or maybe it seems daunting, I'm hoping you're going to walk away from this webinar with more confidence and also some new fundraising tools yourselves. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. So good news, to make all of the things I've been talking about succeed, we have Foundation Directory. Foundation Directory is Candid's premier fundraising tool that helps you diversify your funding sources and helps you find grants. But more than that, within a few simple steps, you'll be able to find funders who are aligned to your mission. You'll also be able to research funders who have funded missions just like yours in the past. And ultimately, through our tool, you will be able to connect. We help you find the key decision makers and foundations and help you start building those connections and those relationships that ultimately lead to securing more grants in the future. So to get into our tool and start off with some few simple steps to start building robust prospect lists that eventually will lead to securing more grants and diversifying your funding mix, I'm going to hand it off to David Holmes. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm going to share the foundation directory with everybody. Now, this class, I'm going to share you what the foundation directory looks like. And if you haven't seen it before, it is available for subscription. It's also available for free at a lot of locations across the country. So we're going to make sure to tell you exactly that. And I'm not going to be giving you the basics on how to use it and all the little different features for a beginner. I think a lot of you may have already experienced it or already are aware of it. But if you're not, there is a class called Introduction to Finding Grants that we run regularly that we'll share a link to with you at the end of this particular presentation. So what I'm going to do is just show you how I like to get into Foundation Directory to do a little bit more searching when the normal searching may, you may have reached a dead end with it. And for those of you who don't know how it works, this is the main page. You can use natural language and just put in what you're doing when you do a search. So Foundation Directory, if I want to search for funders, say I have a youth organization in Milwaukee, I might put in youth development, which describes what my nonprofit does, and Milwaukee. You can just put in the words that you would use to describe what you do, what your nonprofit is, and then do a search. Now I come up with results immediately. And you can see at the very top the terms that we use here in-house when we were categorizing grants and grant makers to describe programs that are funded. So youth development in Milwaukee happened to be a very good match. If I looked up there and I saw things that I didn't like, I can X them out, or I can go ahead and edit them and add more things in. And what I tend to do actually is to go into the advanced search. I would say that most of the people that are doing a lot of searching in Foundation Directory will use the advanced search because you can see many more fields and many more ways to narrow your search. So that's one good tip to know, is that you don't have to just use very, very basic searches. You can go in and decide, well, youth development is part of what we do, but we also are an education-based nonprofit. So maybe I want to add the term education. And I can do that. I can add additional terms in these searches. Also, if I want to match all of these terms, for example, I can change this match any, which it defaults to match all. So I could put youth development, I could put education, I can put other terms in here and keep adding to make it more exactly what it is that I'm doing. The more you put in there when you have a match any, the broader the search is, the longer the list is going to be. But generally what I search, subject area, geographic focus, perhaps population served, I will add that in. And I wind up with a list of results. And you can see if I do this search now with the terms that I put in here, it gets to be quite a long list. And that's really helpful if you're looking to try and find as many possibilities. But when you're trying to narrow it down, sometimes it's a little difficult. So I then think about how I can narrow it down by maybe shrinking the number of years that are shown. I like to see the more recent years. I could do that. I could also add in a term that would describe what the money is going to be used for, such as support strategy terms. But let's imagine that I want to just work with this list. One of the best things about Foundation Directory is that it sorts everything that you search in order by the funders who have given the most grants, not the most money, but the most grants towards the thing that you're searching. So I searched youth development and education in Milwaukee. Greater Milwaukee Foundation has given over 5,000, close to 6,000 grants for those different items, those different types of programs. So I know if I look at this, they're probably the most likely to fund me. And that's the order that we put things in. If you're more interested in amount funded, you can resort by clicking on the amount funded and resort that. But oftentimes it's the ones who give the most grants that you're going to be most interested in. So if you wanted to look at each of those individual grants, I can click on this number, but even better, I can click on the profile over here, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. And that's what you see here, Greater Milwaukee Foundation. You see at the top, we update this pretty readily. It was last updated on the 16th of October, which is a couple of weeks ago. The basic grant information is updated every year, and they report directly to us with this information. So I get a nice profile of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. But I want to see, once I get to this point, I want to see a couple of things. I want to see, are they likely to fund my type of program? And how much are they likely to give to me? So just looking at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, I can see as a little survey at the very top, the most recent giving. In the last 5 years, this is what they give mostly for. And they give mainly in Wisconsin. You can see they give in a lot of different subject areas, but education is quite important to them. And human services, which youth development fits in, is also important. The grants don't tend to be too huge. But as I look further down, I can see even more details about who they give to. Another good tip for making sure that you're connecting to the right funder is to look here at the list of grants that they've given. These are grants just in the areas that we searched. So not all of their grants, but the ones that are specific to what we searched. And I find a couple of things: the most common amount that they give and specific grants that they've given recently. This gives me more and more material to use to decide, is this a good match for me? If I see organizations I know, that's a really good sign. If I know that they're like me and they're getting grants from this foundation, they're more likely to give. It's likely that this foundation is likely to give to me. There's an easy way to get through everything that's in this profile. And by the way, this profile, which I'm looking at here, is also easy to email to yourself and download. But as I scroll through it, there are certain things that jump out at me. I'm always thinking, how do I connect with them? So I want to know in detail what their program areas are. And this gives me a lot of detailed information about what they give for. And I can find in there why they're interested in youth. And I can read specifically what they're interested in. Further down, I can find out how to apply to them, including how to approach them if I've never been to them before. It's always good to get hints and guidance for how to make a connection to them. Also, the kind of things they don't like to fund, I like to look at. Even more important as I go through this is knowing who's in this particular foundation. And I get a list of their people that are in their staff. One thing I know just from being a fundraiser in a city is that you recognize people. You recognize people that you've networked with. You recognize people that you know from other connections. Those might be people that can help make an introduction for you. Because when it gets right down to it, the most important thing here is how to connect up with them. Even when they say, fill out our online form, I recommend making a connection, looking for someone to call, looking for a phone number, reaching out and making sure that they're interested in getting a grant proposal from you. So I use this if they have a contact number here, and I like to see who's the number one contact, number one person to contact. This is a great way to get started, to look at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, for example, and get connections from that. Some foundations, this foundation had a lot of detailed contact information, some don't. And I'll talk in a little bit about what you do in that case. I also want to show you a tip that some people look beyond, some people don't ever take a look at, but it's further down here in this search. So I showed you the search, I gave you the number of recipients, 12,918 grant makers, and it's a long list to go through. But there's another way to work it. If you go a little further down, you can look at recipients of grants. And these are recipients of grants for youth development and education. Now, why would I look at the recipients rather than the grant makers? Well, I'll tell you. You can look at these and look for an organization that's very similar to yours. And let's assume that you have a mentoring organization in Milwaukee. I might pull up one of the biggest mentoring organizations in the country, the Big Brothers Big Sisters, Metropolitan Milwaukee, and I get to see not just who they are and what they do and a little bit of a profile of them. I see who all is funding them. So we know the Greater Milwaukee Foundation is one of their funders, but here's a list of over 700 other grants that they've received from different foundations, from United Way. You can take a look at all of these and really get a picture of who is supplying the funding to this particular nonprofit. If I'm like them, or if I search and find a nonprofit that's just like me, I know I am more likely to get funding because they've given to very similar organizations. You can do this search yourself, by the way, without working backwards from the search that I did by going up here to organization name in the advanced search. So it's advanced search and it's organization name. And I've searched Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Metropolitan Milwaukee. That gives me that list that then I can go through to find who has funded them. Think about other organizations that you're wondering, how did they get funding? Who did they get funding from? You can put them in here, pull them up, and understand them. It's a great resource for doing that kind of searching. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to go back to the slides because I want to show you another element of building relationships that I think that a lot of people overlook. So I'm going to pull up the slides here. And bear with me as I get to the correct slide. Sorry for that. The correct slide is about connecting with prospective funders. So I already told you, when you look at a foundation directory profile, you see contact information, phone numbers, you see how they like to be approached initially for some of the funders. For a lot of other funders, they don't give you a lot of detailed information because they don't have the staff or the time or the inclination to be as open as some other funders. And that drives a lot of people crazy. They go in there and they say, you know, I want to get in and I want to make a connection to a particular funder, but they say they give only to pre-selected organizations, or they don't have an open application procedure, or they just don't have much contact information. We don't give you unlisted phone numbers. We give you what they're willing to share. But there are other ways to think about connecting to them. And one of them I'm going to tell you about is using any profile of that's in Foundation Directory. And I'm going to bring up one particular profile. Let me go to the actual show here so it looks a little bit bigger. This is the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Now you see, this is one of the profiles of funders. Tells you the same thing that the other foundation that I looked at did. But notice up at the top, there's a little LinkedIn link. If you are working with LinkedIn, if you do it for your own business, you should know that that's a great way to find people to connect to at different funders. People that you don't know, people that you may not be connected to. LinkedIn is a great way to begin to build connections. And as we always talk about in all of our fundraising classes, making connections and personal connections are the way to continue to get funding from different funders. So I go to the MacArthur Foundation, I click on that little LinkedIn, and what happens, I go directly to LinkedIn. And if I'm logged into LinkedIn, it will come up with my login. So this is my LinkedIn page. And here is the MacArthur Foundation. I'm already someone who could follow them. You could click to follow them. I find out a lot of different things, but if I look at this record closely and scroll down, here's a connection that I know that works there. I'm like, well, that's great. I've never gotten funding from the MacArthur Foundation. Maybe this person could give me an introduction to them. Now, I'm just using MacArthur as an example, but think of all the other funders that you might want an introduction to, that you might not know somebody there and that you could get connected to. This way, I could reach out through LinkedIn to a person that I know is connected to that foundation and maybe get introduced, have a phone call, get introduced to another program officer, someone like that. It's a way to build connections, even when you don't have a direct connection to the people that you want to see. This is the MacArthur Foundation page, and you can see I've gone down to the list of their staff. All of the staff that we know have a LinkedIn page are listed. So John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, we know of a lot of staff that work for them that have a LinkedIn page. If I click on any of those little ins next to their names, I wind up going back to LinkedIn. And here are some of the people that I connect into. And I see sometimes that I'm not directly connected to them. None of these people that are pictured here am I directly connected to. However, I know somebody who's connected to each one of them, different people in some cases. So if I'm trying to make a connection to a program officer at a foundation and I don't have a direct connection to them, that doesn't mean that I couldn't be introduced. We talk a lot in advanced foundation fundraising about thinking about using the connections that you have. The people that you know that know other people that are connected in some way to them, maybe foundation representatives that know other foundation representatives. That's how you get introduced to those funders that seem to be unreachable. You look and you say, well, my friend Stephen, my friend Rachel knows this person. Maybe they can introduce me. Maybe they can suggest what's the best way to contact this person, and they can help me out. That's really what this is about, is making additional connections. I'm going to turn this back over to Kyle, but know that you can ask us some questions as we get on here, but I'm going to stop sharing and let Kyle take the rest of the slides. Kyle?
Mute here. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Okay, so we can see the slide where can you access Foundation Directory. Before I continue, I do want to reiterate that you will be getting a link to this slide deck or a PDF. You'll get access to this presentation by email. Our follow-up email will come within 48 hours. So all the links and resources that are in this presentation, you'll have direct access to. There will also be a recording from this webinar. So please check the follow-up email and investigate everything we're teaching you today afterwards. Okay, so where can you find Foundation Directory? How can you access it? We have a number of ways. Foundation Directory Professional Plan, which includes all the functionality that we've shown today, is free to use in hundreds of Candid partner locations. So if you go to Candid's website at candid.org/find-us, you will be able to search a map using zip code, city, state, and you can find free access locations near you. So we definitely suggest like checking their websites and catalogs to make, or contact them to make sure you can see what their local hours and availability are. You can also access Foundation Directory by subscription. And by doing this, you can get Foundation Directory wherever you can access the internet, at your home, your office, even a cafe. And individual subscribers get some really convenient features that are not possible in a public version, like the ability to mark and save past funders. You can create your own custom prospect lists. You can save past searches that you're doing on the platform, and you can manage your grant proposals. So this is all available within a dashboard as a subscriber. You can, as you can see, you can go to candid.org/funding to find out more about subscribing. I've also seen some commotion, which is great, in the Q&A, and some people have been asking how they can access, or how smaller nonprofits might be able to get access to Foundation Directory. Well, we have a plan called the Go for Gold plan, and this is for nonprofits who are making less than 1 million in revenue a year. So we want to provide equitable access to Foundation Directory for these smaller nonprofits. So pairing your Candid nonprofit profile with Foundation Directory, it's going to enable these smaller nonprofits and your nonprofit possibly to easily identify, connect, and establish relationships with funders with the hopes of securing more grants. So all you need to do in order to join this program, if your nonprofit has less than 1 million in revenue, is to earn a gold seal of transparency. And then once you earn your gold seal, you'll see an access code in your benefits section, and this will give you access to Foundation Directory Essential Plan. I also invite everybody here to sign up and register for our on-demand and live trainings. So these are now free on Candid Learning. So there's a lot of rich resources here to help you through your fundraising process, just sharpen overall fundraising skills, help you with grant writing, nonprofit management skills, etc. This is a really rich resource for any beginning nonprofits, even experienced fundraisers. We have stuff for everybody. So please visit it. On the bottom left hand, you can also see a handy help guide link. This will take you to tutorial videos for Foundation Directory. So if you're new to the platform and new to this fundraising tool, you can go to this guide, and there's some simple, easy to follow along videos to help you use the tool for your fundraising. Ooh. Okay, last but not least, we have a survey. Please just take a minute, scan this QR code. This is really, really, really important for the Candid team. We're always trying to improve our own program offerings. So please scan the survey. It takes only a minute, but it's really helpful for us in order to improve. All right, I'll give you just a minute. And last but not least, we are going to get to our question portion. So we've seen a lot of activity in the Q&As, which is wonderful. But if we have not gotten to your questions directly in the Q&A, you can still send the questions. There'll be a link to the email address, customersuccess@candid.org. And I'm going to go through a few questions that were pretty prominent in the Q&A section today and give you a direct answer here. I'm also going to ask Dorothy Ho, she's our Senior Director of Marketing, to join in answering some of these questions along with Dave and I. So number one, how do I access Foundation Directory for free? So luckily, we just went over this. There are options for Foundation Directory for free. We have the Partners Program where you can go into your local access point, usually a library, and you can get Foundation Directory Professional Plan. There's also the Go for Gold plan, which was mentioned, that gives nonprofits that are making less than 1 million in revenue access to Foundation Directory Essential Plan.
And I'll just say that the Candid community, the 1,600 plus locations that offer free access to Foundation Directory, is constantly growing. So if you're not sure if there's one near you or there wasn't one last year, check again, because you never know when we might be expanding to different branches of our library system, different locations. Take a look.
Right. Great point. This is a great question. So I've used Foundation Directory, but I've never followed up with key decision makers to develop relationships, as was mentioned. Can you expand on this? And your guidance on whether to follow up even if initial request was denied. Dave, would you like to grab onto that one?
Sure. Yeah, I would say part of fundraising, even from foundations, which seem to be very strict in the way that they operate, it is about relationship building. So even if you submitted a grant proposal and it was turned down, I recommend that you reach out to them. Don't call them and yell at them, but reach out to them and talk to someone who's made the decision. Reach out to their program officer. Ask them why they made that decision. Thank them for consideration, but see if it's possible to come back again in the future. I really do recommend, before you submit a grant proposal, to reach out and try to speak to somebody at the foundation. It's not always possible, but if you can talk to someone, you can ask them whether they're interested in getting a request from you. You can get some answers to maybe some questions you have about the application. What you don't want to do is not reach out, send in a grant request, and get immediately rejected. You would rather hear no earlier and save your time for the funders that are going to fund you than waste your time on sending to ones that don't. So build a relationship if you can. It takes time.
Dorothy, I have a good question for you if you'd like. This is about our SEALs program. What do platinum, gold, and silver destinations mean on grant recipients?
That's a good observation. Someone noticed that there was a gold, silver, platinum, bronze on some of the grant recipients when Dave did a live demo. This is actually linked to our Candid Seals of Transparency program. This is free for any nonprofit to participate. We have over 200 plus partners that work with Candid to absorb the profile information that nonprofits provide to power their giving platforms. These platforms include Facebook, all the major donor advised funds, Network for Good, etc. This program is free for you to participate. All you do is verify that you are able to claim and edit a profile. And to get to bronze, all you really need to do is provide information such as address, the name of your CEO. These are very basic information that all of you should really have. Once you update that profile, your information will be live, and we share that with various partners. And also, millions of visitors come to Candid's GuideStar every year to research nonprofits to support, donate to, etc. So the least I ask everyone, the thing I ask you all to do is at least check that your address is correct, because that'll mean that the funding goes to the right location. And then also, as Kyle mentioned, getting to gold for small nonprofits will enable you to get access to free Foundation Directory. So it's double plus.
Great advice, Dorothy. This is one I think, Dave, you would really enjoy. From our experience, they're saying some have no application RFP details. Is there a way to filter those out? And
Well,
would you even recommend doing this, Dave?
that's the second part of that question. Yes. Yes, there are ways to filter out the funders that do not accept unsolicited applications. That's actually a checkbox. As you go deeper in, when you view the grant makers, when you do the search, you're able to modify it by clicking a checkbox and eliminating the ones that say that. However, I don't recommend that you do that, because one thing about funders is that that box, that little gives only to pre-selected organizations box, is something that's easy for them to check on a report to the IRS on their 990 PF. However, it doesn't really tell the whole story. Most of those funders actually do have ways to be connected. They may not have an open application process and an easy to fill in a form to submit a grant request to them, but they often do publish phone numbers and publish ways of connecting with them. And the people that get more grants when they are fundraising look beyond that gives only to pre-selected organizations to find out what exactly does that mean for them. Does it mean they're only giving to one or two foundations? If I look at their grants list, do I only see a couple of foundations there? Or does it mean that they don't really have the staff to deal with a lot of requests? So they would prefer it if you made a connection to them first, either a letter of introduction, not a grant request, or a phone call before you submitted anything. I encourage you, when you run into that, to do a little bit more research. Ask some of your fellow organizations whether they've gotten funding from this funder. Is there a person there that they talk to? Reach out to them. Again, not with a full grant proposal, but with a phone call or with an email or letter. Try to make a connection. Try to get an introduction from LinkedIn or from one of your other funders, because you'd be surprised at the number of foundations that maybe you have discounted in the past because they don't have a broad and open application procedure, but that might be interested in getting a request from you.
Yeah, open RFPs account for less than 1% of the total funding. So if you're only looking and checking this checkbox, you actually are making it harder for yourself, because you're actually excluding a lot of opportunities out there. And those that need help with writing a letter of intent, I'm going to drop the link into the chat, but Candid just launched a really cool innovation on Candid Labs. It's an AI generative LOI writer, and we'll be very keen for you all to test it out and try it. So I'll drop the link into the chat.
Nice. We're very excited to get people to try this tool. Good idea, Dorothy. This is an interesting question. So this is we understand this is definitely part of the process. I would love to subscribe to Foundation Directory Professional, but how do I sell this to my CEO as a product that will ultimately pay for itself? Dorothy, what would you say to this?
Well, one grant will easily pay for the subscription for the whole year. So my advice, that's the way I would pitch it. Like with one grant, we pay for a subscription, and these grants usually are grandfathered year on year. So you'll find that there's a lot of value by subscribing.
I would talk to somebody else who you know is a subscriber as well, particularly in your region, because if you know that there's another organization that's very similar to yours that is subscribing, they're probably connecting with more funders than you are, and you don't really, that probably wouldn't sound too great to your administration.
And there were some questions about, yes, grant prospecting is daunting. Can you walk through some resources to help with that? Like I said, this deck is going to be shared with everyone via email within 48 hours. I really encourage everyone to tap into learning.candid.org. There's so many resources there that helps you with your grant writing, helps with the fundraising process, helps you sharpen your skills. We have this LOI AI generative tool Please dig into that. We love all the feedback. The more you use it, the better we can make all these things, and the more we know what you need and how we can provide. So
Yeah, a real good place to start if you're very new to everything is the Introduction to Finding Grants class, which was on one of the slides as a link. It's also in the learning.candid.org website. We do it regularly live. We also have a recorded version. That's the essence. That's the basics of it. And you can build on that very easily.
mhm. We also we have a lot of people asking about international data and international grants. Dorothy, the question would be wondering if this is an international database or more of a US focus. When we're talking about Foundation Directory, are we looking mostly at US focused data? And can it be used in Canada also, for example?
So these are US-based foundations. However, they give internationally. If you look at like various of the large organizations, they definitely support international nonprofits. So you can use the data. You can use Foundation Directory to search for international funding.
And while you're speaking on that, how often is Foundation Directory's data updated?
Every day, because as Dave showed, when funders provide us grant information, like the latest date step was 2 weeks ago, we upload that immediately. If a nonprofit updates their seals of transparency, the feed also comes in immediately. It's pretty much daily. And then, of course, if we get any new data from the IRS, we also upload. So, yeah, it's constantly growing. If you look at the front of Foundation Directory, we have a number that indicates how many grants and foundations, and that number grows.
All right, I think we're coming to the end of the questions. Once again, everyone who's participated today, thank you so much. If we haven't gotten to your questions, the link to our support team email should be found in there. Once again, everything's going to be sent by email. We encourage you to click on all the links in the presentation, get involved, join us here at Candid, and thank you also to all the coworkers of mine here who've participated. It's been a great webinar. It's great to see you all, and thanks for all your help.
Good luck, everybody.